thank you everybody for joining this final and so far fairly eventful session of NITheCS Mini-school on research software engineering as an exciting career and a critical component of the research ecosystem. Today is, it's been a series of talks with Jeremy Cohen, myself, Martin O'Reilly. Today is the final talk by Michelle Barker. Michelle Barker is for South Africa, inconvenient time zone. So she has sent in a recording of her talk, and she's left me as her representative to answer questions. Her talk is also shorter than the other talks that have been in the session so far. So the idea is to have a sort of facilitated discussion about some of the things that she talks about in her talk. So if people can sort of gird their loins for that to come at the end. Yes, as I've said before, this is an invitation to join the RSE movement in Africa and beyond, and the platform for that is RSSE Africa. So I'm now going to switch across. Okay, yeah, you can see the beginning of the slideshow the video that I'm going to start playing should be on.
Yes.
So I'm going to play this in a minute, and I'm going to attempt to do something very strange with the audio and just hope that my phone and my laptop are able to keep up with this. But before I start, I want to introduce Michelle Barker. So Michelle Barker co-founded and is currently director of research software of the Research Software Alliance, and has extensive expertise in open science, research software, skills and infrastructure. As a sociologist, Michelle is passionate about building collaborative partnerships to achieve system change. She serves on advisory boards for Fair Impact, Research Software Engineers Asia Association, SB Grid, and the Research Data Alliance Organizational Advisory Board. As a consultant in the field of open science, her roles have included chairing the OECD expert group on digital skills for the research sector and co-editing the European Open Science Cloud Report, Digital Skills for Fair and Open Science. Michelle is a former director of the Australian Research Data Commons, where she led the strategic planning for the Australian government's $180 million 5-year investment in ARDC, the National Research Software Infrastructure Investment Program, and developed a national strategy to enhance digital workforce capacity in the research sector. And I think this all makes her extremely qualified to talk on this subject.
Hi, everyone. I'm Michelle Barker, the director of the Research Software Alliance. Thank you very much for the National Institute for Theoretical and Computational Sciences for having me join this talk today. I'm very appreciative of this opportunity to share some information about how and why research institutes should support research software engineers. As you can see, there's a copy of my slides publicly available at tinyurl.com/Barker-25-OCT. I wanted to start by reviewing why we're all here. I know you've had 3 sessions before this where you've talked on this topic, but I really wanted to reinforce, why is research software so important? Why should we be having a discussion about how to support it? So this is a lovely slide that Carol Goebel showed recently at a funders forum in Montreal in September. It says, software is critical to every step of the research endeavor, just like it's critical to every other endeavor in our lives. And I just think that's a very, very succinct summation of why research software is so important. Make sure we're all on the same page about what research software is. There's this very nice definition from Van Nieuwenpoort and Katz, which gives a range of different ways in research software can be seen in research. It can be a component of our instruments, like medical imaging. Sometimes research software is the instrument, such as modeling climate change. It can be used to analyze research data or present research results. It can assemble or integrate existing components into a working whole, particularly in the case of workflows. It can be an infrastructure or an underlying tool, and it can facilitate distinctively research-oriented collaboration. So when we're talking about research software, there are many different ways we can conceive what it is, or think of different examples that are in our own environment or community or institution. Again, to reinforce some of what's probably been discussed in some of the earlier lectures, how do we know that research software is crucially important? There's been some research and publications that show, for example, that it's important for funders because analysis of National Science Foundation projects over 11 years in the US found that 20% of them typically discuss software in the abstracts. It's important from a publication viewpoint because there's some analysis in these dot points here that shows the software intensive projects are the majority of current publications. We can also see that it's important from the researcher viewpoint. Again, some surveys that have shown, for example, that more than 90% of both US and UK researchers in separate studies use research software, and about 50% develop it as part of their research. So no matter what kind of research you do or where or how, there's a very high likelihood that you're dependent on research software, if not actively using it or even developing it as part of your work. It's because of the importance of research software that my organization joined. I just wanted to explain a little bit about the Research Software Alliance to explain why I ended up here doing this talk. So the RSE vision is that research software and those who develop and maintain it are recognized and valued as fundamental and vital to research worldwide. And our way of doing this through our mission is to advance the research ecosystem as a whole by collaborating with decision makers and key influencers around the globe from existing organizations and communities. So we formed about 4 years ago in recognition of the fact that there wasn't a single international body that enabled the many different fantastic research software initiatives that exist to come together and think about silos or duplication or ways to collaborate or where to be represented in international conversations. Because there are many amazing efforts already in the community, whether it be at national level or disciplinary, international, or focused on a key topic such as software sustainability. Here's a few examples of some of the things that we do. These are the major stakeholders that we work across in the community. With the funders, we've just released the Amsterdam Declaration for Funding Research Software Sustainability, which a number of funding organizations are now signing up to be signatories on, and other individuals or organizations can also become supporters. We work with policymakers to influence international discussions of relevance, and we track national policy initiatives so that governments can continue to learn from each other. We work with community leaders through things like our free community forums that anyone can join. We work with community influencers as well in co-leading initiatives such as the drafting of the Fair for Research Software Principles, which came out last year. And we work with publishers to support in a range of different ways. So for example, we have a research task force at the moment looking at code availability by publishers. So we try to work across a broad cross-section of parts of the ecosystem and look forward to engaging more with some of your organizations perhaps in the future. To come back to this central topic of today's discussion, how can institutions support RSEs? I wanted to lay the groundwork first that evidences that RSEs, research software engineers, are critical because they can drive improvements in research outcomes and impact. So there's a few papers linked here. I'm not going to talk to them in detail. You can go and look at the links from the slides yourself, but they just basically show in a few different disciplines examples of recognition that research software engineers are important to research outcomes. And at the bottom 2 points are looking a little bit more broadly about open science and open source software, of which both heavily overlap with research software, and the arguments there for their importance specifically for institutions. There's a number of ways in which research institutions can support research software and the research software engineers that they employ to improve their research outcomes. This way of explaining it comes from Brian Nosek's strategy of culture change. This is a diagram that's often used in our field to show what is needed at any level of the system, be it institutional or national or international, to get change in the research sector or any kind of sector. That you need these 5 elements. You need infrastructure to make it possible, starting at the bottom. User interface and experience to make it easy, although I sometimes reterm this as skills and training. You need communities to make it normative. You need incentives to make it rewarding. And you need policy to make it required. And typically, some of these things develop at different speeds, but ultimately you need some of all of them working together to achieve cultural change. I'm going to talk mostly about the policy in this diagram, but let me first touch on communities. So as I said in describing RSE's mission, we work across existing stakeholders. It's not our goal to try and work with every single person who interacts with research software internationally, because there's a myriad of fantastic organizations already in that space. So for example, in training, there's organizations like the Carpentries or Open Life Science. In terms of infrastructure, there are many national and international infrastructures, whether they be research software code repositories or research infrastructures around a particular topic, such as bioinformatics or astronomy. Incentives is an area that's still developing. I guess many of us are looking to the work on research assessment reform to solve bigger problems, but certainly, for example, at national levels or disciplinary levels, occasionally institutional levels, there's starting to be some thinking around how to incentivize research software, how to provide career path for different research software engineers, or awards for people at a national level. This happens in France and Australia in the development of research software that has significant impact. In terms of communities, again, there are many communities at national, international, disciplinary, regional level within institutions on a particular focus, whether it be software citation or funding. One example that I really wanted to highlight is, of course, the RSSE Africa group, the African Research Software and Systems Community, which is a uniquely African forum and explicitly includes research system engineers and software. Founded in 2019, free to join. Thank you to RSSE Africa for sharing these slides with us. If you want a little bit more information about what they do check out their website. They've got a new LinkedIn group and join them in raising the awareness of research software engineering, sharing best practices, showcasing African expertise, and helping to connect African RSEs with each other and the global community and maximize that flow of information and learnings. As I said, out of the 5 elements of the NITheCS strategy, the NITheCS diagram, I'll focus most on policies because it's where we have a major initiative at the moment. So there's a working group that's been formed on policies in research organizations for research software. It's co-convened by my organization and the Research Data Alliance and supported through the RDA, the Research Data Alliance Tiger program by the Netherlands eScience Centre, and it has 8 co-chairs with a range of expertise, including myself and Kim Martins, and great to have had Kim's involvement in this, and thanks again for being able to showcase this in your environment, Kim. The motivation for this group forming was the demand for research software is increasing rapidly. That we know that research software is built by people in research institutions, but it can be built by different types of people, and they have different types of needs and different types of skills. So there's a lot of similarities. But regardless of the drivers or who write codes, we need to advance the sharing, reuse, and management of research code. There's a strong reason to be motivated to better support RSEs by institutions because there are a lot of benefits that can be provided by giving better guidance to the developers of research software. So it ensures that developers know what practices to use and how to apply them. This can really help reduce duplication of effort and get gains of economies of scale. To develop recognition for the value of these practices and the risks of not using them. So institutions often have problems where the staff with these kinds of skills have a rapid turnover, may leave and go to industry. So we really need to develop ways to support and value them through career paths and or other incentives. It enables the principles of sustainability and reproducibility to be built into software development. So if you're a research institution and concerned with your organization's reputation in terms of being able to create reproducible and trustworthy science, then making sure that your software is being developed so that it's reproducible within the research that it contributes to is quite important. And so institutions can develop software policy and guidance to underpin the research quality, the research quality at their institution. The working group has a number of aims and planned activities. First and foremost, to build a community of stakeholders who want to share learnings around this, and to develop a list of relevant policies and to be able to give some advice to people in this area. You can look at our case statement online, which describes in detail what we're aiming to do over the next 18 months. These include identifying existing policies, and there's already a number in a database, to collate resources on how to support policy change, develop a common framework for research policy, to identify area where policies are lacking, and to provide some case studies to help institutions see how others have achieved this implementation and adoption. So it's a working group that anyone can join for free. It runs for the next 18 months. You can go to the link there and join the working group. You need to sign up to be a Research Data Alliance member first, which is free. And from then on, you can be on our mailing list to be kept up to date on what's happening, and or engage with some of the working groups or some of the events that we'll be having over the next 18 months. If you're wondering what kind of policies in scope, maybe starting to think, should your institution have policies that engage with research software? And if so, how? Does it mean they all have to be about open source software, that all research software has to be open? There's a range of policies that are in scope, and you can see that if you look at the database we've already started developing. So typically an organization and a university or any other type of research performing organization may have a whole range of policies where research software could be mentioned, as well as, sometimes an overarching research software policy, although that's not always the best answer. So you might already have policies around open source, perhaps to do with your administrative software that could be expanded to think about research software. Software licensing is an area where organizations sometimes do have existing policies, sometimes policies around open science in general, and given that open software is one of the pillars, if you have an open science policy by default, you have an open software science policy as well, open source software policy as well, sorry. If you think about how to implement the FAIR principles in your organization, whilst commonly applied to research data, equally applicable to research software, and there have been FAIR principles written specifically for research software. Policies around research skills and training can benefit from recognizing the need for researchers to be able to engage with and very often develop their own research software. And even policies just on research data can extend to include research software given its key role in data analysis. So there's a whole range of ways in which institutions can begin to think about how to address research software and supporting RSEs in their policy. If you're interested in this topic, there's a few specific examples here, as well as more, as I said, in the database. And we're always looking for new examples. Obviously, that's part of our work to keep collating more examples of who's doing what, so that other institutions have a large database to learn from. As one example of what's happening nationally in one community, this is a slide from Meke de Jong of the Netherlands eScience Centre. There was a workshop a couple of weeks ago in the Netherlands, organised by a number of organisations in the Netherlands, which aim to discuss this topic specifically in the Netherlands. I'm quite interested in this survey result here, which asked, does your organisation currently have a research software policy? And actually 5 organisations said yes. So we're digging into who they are and making sure that we're well aware of their work. So there's certainly places around the globe which are interested in this work, and we'd love to hear more about what's happening in your region and add that into the global discussion. If you're interested in the work that Research Software Alliance does more broadly, there's a range of ways you can engage, such as our regular newsletter, signing up to the declaration that I mentioned earlier, joining our task forces, our Slack, coming to our free community leaders forum, open to anyone who identifies as a community leader. And a community leader doesn't have to necessarily be someone whose job title is manager or senior staff or CEO. It can equally be a student still undertaking some of their studies who is leading or starting to lead a grassroots initiative or a community initiative. So we recognize that leaders can come from all types of different backgrounds. And I'd just like to thank some of the many research supporters, including our founding members and organizational members. So in conclusion, I hope that's given you a few ideas about how your institution could support RSEs and where there's some other work happening. And I'm going to leave you with a discussion question, which you might like to engage with. I'm so sorry that I couldn't make this time in person, but time zones don't always work for us. But you might want to reflect on, if your research institution was going to try and better support research software engineers, and where do you already perhaps have things in place, or where are there at national level or in disciplinary level that support RSEs that are in your employ? And if, as a next step to consider, well, where would be the low-hanging fruit? Where could you begin to think about providing a little more policy support, some more localized training, or interfacing more with larger scale training happening elsewhere? How else could you encourage staff to utilize existing infrastructure, or is there additional infrastructure needed? Where could you start to think about incentives? Where might you be able to improve career paths for people like research software engineers? So plenty to think about there. Thank you again for having me, and I hope you have a fruitful discussion now. Thank you.
Fantastic. So what I want to do is take Michelle's suggestion that there be some discussion of the people who are here, and I see some familiar names. Thank you for coming. So if I, let me see, where did I put it? I have, I think it was here. Yeah, there we go. I have a Google Doc set up that I should be able to get the link for. Actually, the link is already in the document, but that's okay. Copy link. I'm going to put that in the chat for everybody. And if people want to go to that document and put anything in there that they'd like to, also by any means, if you want to stick your hand up and make a comment or ask a question, feel free to hold forth. Maybe if you want to, if you feel so inclined, maybe introduce yourself as well. But if you feel like just anonymously adding stuff into this document, and then that I can start to sort of bring up the points that come up. And I've added some, you'll see in the sort of sidebar, I've added headers that correspond to that pyramid, that the NITheCS strategy of culture change that was in Michelle's talk. I put in headers that correspond to each of those levels, but don't feel obliged to stick to those. Feel free to add your own headers if there's something that you feel doesn't fit in with that framework. Are there any questions or comments in the meantime? I'm not seeing any yet. I'll let people, there's a hand up from Peter. Peter, do you want to introduce yourself? I've sort of alluded to who you are in the past, but maybe you want to actually say who you are.
Sorry, just getting used to all of the different buttons. Yeah, so I'm one of the founders of RSE Africa, and I've been working as a research software engineer, although never in a job with that title, for decades now, in the bioinformatics field in South Africa. But just, yeah, so I'll chip in on the document, and I think that having been around for as long as I have, I know quite a number of other people who are either working as research software engineers or research systems engineers in South Africa, and I'm going to make some comments, but I mean in the document, but you know, it's a little bit distressing how little has changed in the last decade. I think there was a big spurt of energy in around 2010 to 2015. And we seem to actually have gone a little bit backwards in terms of activities. And one of the things that is most interesting to me is that despite the discussions around this thing, we haven't seen any movement from the National Research Foundation on rewarding the production of software or as a research output. So if you want, obviously, if you have a job where you're on an RSE track or a systems engineer track where they exist, that's pretty rare in South Africa, then maybe your university will recognize what you're doing. But if you want to actually, and I really like the talk that you gave, a couple of weeks ago, where if you want to basically transition between the academic and the software producing tracks, producing software is a serious disadvantage to your career in South Africa. And I'm just wondering, I mean, Francisco's with NITheCS becoming, emerging and things like that, I'm just wondering if there's been, in the context of the need to promote computational science in South Africa, has there been discussions around this this gap in NRF thinking?
Kim, do you want me to answer?
It kind of is a question for you, Francesco.
No. I'm happy to give it a try. People, thank you very much for raising this, because the reason why we starting engage as NITheCS engaging with Kim is because we want to help your community reach the goals that you want to reach. Yeah. From the side from DSI and RF, what I know for sure is that there are great push towards everything that is open science, yeah, and open data, yeah. So that implicitly, yeah, there is of course also a great push for open source and developing it, yeah. Having said that, I know that one of the challenges that we have is that there is not enough such software coming out of South African universities. Yeah, maybe here and there is something, but it's not really yet ingrained. As far as I can see, I might be completely wrong. The culture of producing software and making it freely, openly available. Yeah. On the contrary, sometimes people that have software protect it as much as they can and make sure that nobody else can access it, yeah, just to maintain their own position, yeah. So that we are trying to assist Kim and you and other members of your community to start at least an awareness campaign about the need of research software engineering, yeah. As Kim shared the famous pyramid, yeah. Community is one of the core elements. I think it is in the middle of the pyramid, yeah. So that's what we're trying to do at the moment. Yeah, try to build a community, yeah. And the next step is then to convince NRF to give us incentives. Yeah, NITheCS can assist in some way, yeah, but one must not forget that NITheCS is not a funding agency. Yeah, we are born as a national research facility. Yeah, so we will be users of RSEs. Yeah, and in that sense, happy to support them. Yeah. But we're not a funding agency, so we're not really. Our role is not that to replace NRF. Yeah, that's not what we want to do. Yeah, but because we promote theoretical and computational sciences, we want to promote also the research software engineering side of things. To make the computational sciences maybe more professional. Yeah, if you want. Yeah. So those are my 2 bits and pieces. Yeah.
Yeah, I think the subject of open source software seems to be a bit of, I mean, I'm very naive in the subject still. I'm trying to learn as I go, but it seems to be a fairly sticky subject in South Africa. I'm not sure about elsewhere in the world. But I believe there are these sort of constraints about universities having to make sure that research outputs that can have some commercial value potentially must be, the value must be returned to the population where there's been public funding. And I think that it's maybe a little bit unclear to the people who define the policies. If something is made available as open source, is that considered, returning the value back to the population? I mean, I would argue yes, but yeah, that's something that I'm trying to make more connections with people who have that kind of responsibility on their mind. Does anyone else want to stick their hand up and make a comment? Or I'm just looking at this document in the meantime. Feel free, as I said, to add information to it or add your thoughts. So yeah, I see that NRF to Anonymous Sheep added research, recognize research software as a research output, including in contributing to NRF ratings. I have no idea of how plausible.
Sorry, I'm the Anonymous Sheep.
You're the Anonymous Sheep. Less
yeah,
anonymous.
No, it's plausible. But yeah, Anoda is asking actually who is with us today. So maybe we could, I don't know, Anoda, do you want people to like introduce themselves in the chat, or how do you want to get a sense of who's in the room?
That would be very great. And thanks, Anelda, for making that suggestion. If anyone wants to stick their hand up, and I will call on you to introduce yourself. Alternatively, if you just want to type into the chat and I'll read out your introduction. Give people a chance to do that. I recall, so this is your comment, then I recall at least part of this cosmology software was developed in South Africa. So there is, case studies that should be maybe made more visible, is what I guess you're saying, Peter.
Yeah, sorry, sorry to kind of hog the mic a bit, but I mean, maybe Anoda can speak to it. We try to run the International Research Software Engineering Survey in South Africa over several years. Well, not tried, we did. And we didn't actually ask as part of that survey, well, what have you made? And maybe it is worth, when we do the next incarnation of the Research Software Engineering Survey, to try and get a sense of, well, what are people actually producing? Because I know that we are producing a fair amount of, I don't know what a fair amount would be. I know we are producing research software in South Africa in fields of bioinformatics and astronomy. Those are the fields I know best. But because it's not recognized, no one like kind of generally publishes it. Like one seldom publishes software as software unless you're going to write a paper about it, so it's not necessarily that easy to track this via looking at publications. But I know that, yeah, so getting a survey out there to say, well, what are you actually writing would be very interesting. And I think it's a worthwhile exercise.
I'm just adding into the document, maybe this is something that NIThe could be partly a platform for, maybe some kind of national consultancy to provide advice to researchers and or uni tech transfer officers on how to meet government standards, expectations for open source science, I don't know if such a thing already exists, but maybe that would be something that would be valuable. I'm just going to read out a couple of introductions. So Revelation says they are a research chemist in the biorefinery sector, trying to find ways that they can probably integrate this into their studies. I would say that this is very probable to integrate into your studies, maybe even in the sense of any software that you develop as part of your research, trying to find ways of making that some more public in the sort of fair way that other people could potentially reuse it. It's definitely something I think that can improve the profile of researchers, even if they don't intend to go into a more RSE type career direction. Amy says they are a PhD student in the physics department, don't have RSE experience, but here to find out more and how they might get involved. I would say researchers, again, researchers who maybe don't want to be RSEs and maybe aren't even that interested in coding themselves, but having the awareness that of what an RSE can do to raise your profile and advance your research, to be willing to sort of seek out those sort of collaborations, I think moves the needle, can move the needle in itself. And then Peter, as you've introduced yourself already, but like Sunbee, bioinformatician, migrating from RSE to academic. That's interesting. We should maybe talk about that. Maybe this is not the forum now. That would have been my talk last, or my talk the week before last. I'd be interested to hear about your direction that you're taking. So I see that there is another thing under the Make It Easy heading we have at the moment. So carpentries training, give people the skills they need. That national consultancy thing on advice on how to make research software open source. And then someone, Anonymous Sheep, thanks Peter, highlight guides to improving your software quality. You heard something about this from the Saddler folks. Yes, and also Martin O'Reilly's talk last week mentioned the Turing Way, and I think the Turing Way is a fantastic reference for people who want to figure out how to apply best practices. We have some more introductions. So Anelda from Telarify, RSE's African community partner and background in bioinformatics, now consultant for digital computational capacity development across disciplines. Thanks for coming, Anelda. Apologies for messing up the name. Bule, master's chemical engineering student interested in transitioning to RSE. Fantastic. So this talk series has done its job, I think. Welcome everyone. Anyone else want to introduce yourselves, please be free. I'm just going to go and look again to the document to see what's being added so far. Yeah, so under the Make It Possible, one of my suggestions, and this is based on stuff that has happened in the UK that I think was quite formative in some cases. So I know of at least one RSE group that was founded by someone who was given a national RSE fellowship, but I think there's been a lot of work done. I mean, actually, even Jeremy Cohen, who gave the first talk in this series, was one of the RSE fellows. So yeah, maybe that's something that South Africa should try and establish, fellowships for people to be RSEs, to focus their work on developing research software. And one of the things that the UK-based RSE fellowships are about is also basically raising the profile of RSE nationally. So that, their work is not just narrowly focused on the particular piece of software that they might be developing. It's also about advocating for research software as a profession. And I'm going to bounce around a little bit. No more introductions. Nobody wants to introduce themselves. Let's see. We have. I'm pretty sure I saw something being added, but it's been removed. Okay. Unless anyone wants to stick their hand up and make another comment, or place something in the chat, or place something in the document.
Sorry, Kim.
Yep.
Can I ask you a question, Kim?
By all means.
So one of the things, and I'm not quite sure which side of the pyramid to put it on. One of the things that I've often spoken about is a job track for RSEs. So in other words, maybe job descriptions or the recognition that this is a role at universities. But you've spoken, and I wonder if you could maybe comment on this again. About because I think you are currently a postdoc, right?
Yes.
Officially. So a lot of software is produced by postdocs, and postdocs have the advantage of being not taxed in South Africa. So I don't know if you can speak to. I mean, I know there's not one size fits all, but I mean, do you think that a postdoc who produces software is another kind of valid thing to have as a model?
I definitely think so. I think you've kind of unearthed my nefarious scheme to advanced RSE at Stellenbosch, is to try and find ways of mobilizing the postdoc population to recognize that even if they don't have the formal title and a job role, I mean, as a postdoc, you don't actually have a job. As an RSE, they can still claim to be filling that role. And in fact, so the RSE at Sun initiative that I founded 2 years ago now, on the website rse.sun.ac.za, there are a couple of postdocs that have agreed to be listed on the website, saying that they are RSEs based on the work that they do, even if they're officially postdocs. But my thinking is that the postdoc population in Stellenbosch University, and by extension any given university in South Africa, is a very natural potential core for an RSE initiative to develop in a university. You've got, I mean, if you can establish a community and some norms and training opportunities, I think that can move the needle in a massive way. And that's what I'm hoping to be able to start really digging into from next year, if all works out well for me, with some funding approaches that I'm chasing at the moment. I see, did that answer the question, Peter?
Yeah, and I mean, I guess it would just mean that, like, again, producing software is not academic curiosity or suicide.
Yeah,
which I presume is one of the things that you are working on to figure out how to, because as a postdoc, you're normally expected to produce papers, right?
Yeah. So I'm probably not. I'm maybe not as stereotypically academic as most people. So I've maybe got in some ways the benefit of not being so paper focused. Maybe I should be. But I don't want to. I mean, I was saying this in my talk 2 weeks ago, that I really don't believe that being part of an RSE group in any capacity should be seen as detrimental to someone's career, regardless of whether they actually want a stereotypical academic career or not. It should be something that enables. That's one of the reasons. So Michelle mentioned this Pro4RS working group that's been established, that I'm one of the co-chairs of. One of the reasons that I put myself forward as to be a co-chair is that I'm hoping to sort of put forward Stellenbosch University as a good case study of the kind of policy that is supportive of RSE, and the kind of, yet to figure out exactly how to do that. But I mean, that's part of how the purpose of the working group is to figure out what works. But I'm particularly interested in things that cover that point that you just mentioned, of making sure that developing skills and a portfolio of research software is not considered career suicide. It should actually be the opposite. It should be actually something that sort of provides a better platform for someone's research career. So I just want to read out, so Nelda says, we have our next RSSE Africa community meetup on the 8th of November. This will be a community discussion where we can address any questions you may have, meet peers, and plan activities for next year. Find our events along with other relevant information for RSSE at rsse.africa/events. Interesting funding opportunities for individuals and communities of practice, Code for Society. So there's a link in the chat for that. I'm going to paste that into the document, actually, if you don't mind, Nelda. Somewhere I'll find a place for that. And then Bontu gives an introduction. I'm a recent software engineering graduate, welcome, who is interested in doing research. Welcome. I'm here to learn more about RSE. Fantastic. Well, I hope this series of talks has given you a little bit of a taste, Bontu. But you're definitely someone who should be joining RSSE Africa, because then you'll start to connect with people like myself and like Peter, who, as he says, is probably the most experienced RSE on the African continent from the sounds of things at this point. I'm just going to paste rewarding. I think I'm going to put it in there. Okay. Oh, fantastic. I'm glad to see that Bontu is already part of the RSSE Africa LinkedIn group. And that LinkedIn group is brand new, but that's a very good place to start connecting with people if you're already a LinkedIn fan. And if you're not a LinkedIn fan, you should be, because LinkedIn is great. All right, we have 10 minutes on the hour still, unless anyone else wants to jump in with any questions or comments or last minute whatevers. Please feel free to continue adding stuff to this document that you've got the link to, any sort of thoughts that come in, because I've shared this with Michelle Barker, and I'm sure she will find any notes in there very interesting. Yeah, other than that, I think I'm going to hand back to Francesco for closing this last talk of the RSSE series. And thank you again, Francesco, for providing this platform.
Yeah, no, thank you very much, Kim, for organizing a very interesting lineup of speakers, including yourself. Yeah, and also thank you to all the participants, and maybe in particular to Peter for his continuous inputs that were very important, I think, and because they clarified lots of issues and rectified some of the misbeliefs maybe in that surrounds the writing of software in general, and in particular in South Africa. There is definitely way more that needs to be done, and hopefully with our little mini school we contributed somehow to raise a little bit of awareness for the topic, and we will continue. Yeah. So Kim, we are open to further engagements along these lines, and maybe we should start thinking on a mini school that is not maybe touching the more philosophical aspects of the software engineering, maybe be really the practicalities, so that we can start sharing some skills that people who maybe are playing with the idea to follow such a career path might need to take a more sound decision on their future. Yeah. So thank you very much, Kim, again. Thank you, Peter. Thank you to all the participants. As usual, we will the talks are recorded, so you will find them all on the NITheCS YouTube channel, probably in a day or two. And please keep following our activities, and I hope to see you all again very soon in some other NITheCS event. Thank you very much. Thank you, Kim. Have a good afternoon. Yeah, a good afternoon to everyone.